Hello and welcome to Paint the Edges with your hosts James Mack and James Thayer. Look, today's episode, we're not drawing a blank because I feel like that makes us sound like we don't care. But at the same time, we have so many different variety of topics and vast topics that come up. And sometimes we just want to touch on a little bit of every one of them to hopefully get feedback from yourselves, from the listeners, from the hold on, I haven't checked our subscribe. Have you looked at us our subscriber rate anytime soon? No?
Nope.
I can't remember. I think I only just subscribed to ourselves off my personal one the other day, like 2 or 3 days ago. But on that note, if you want to see my super unironed t-shirt or vest or what a wife beater. Can we say that? I don't know if we can say that. Are we allowed to say that?
Yeah,
whatever.
Tank,
wife beater tank. Yeah. Well, look, dude. Yo, leaning in. This is the new version. Hold on. Let's think about it, right? Wife beater with the sugar-free OG. So it's like we've taken. Ooh, I was going to say
that's going to get the sponsorship.
Okay. I was going to say we've taken all of the good things from Monsters and White tank tops and we've kept them. The rest we've left. So like beating your wife, that's why we got rid of the sugar because that's clearly what it is. So
no holes
Kyle,
in this drywall.
Yeah. Oh no, there's fucking no holes in this house whatsoever in terms of that. So yeah, white tanks and sugar-free Monsters. It's the hippie version, like we said. Like the other day when we went through this, it is very much the health conscious Monster and morally correct wife beater / beater. We'll go with that one. That's it. I fuck it. We're getting cancelled for sure. There will be a cancellation at some stage, or the when Marshall was like trying to get us. Oh, could this be the good news? When Marshall was I think it could be when Marshall was trying to like set up our YouTube and shit. And like he I don't know, he sent us a photo of it. Shut up, Marshall, always. And he sent us like that photo, and like the tick was like not for sensitive viewers, like not for children, not appropriate for children or something. I was like, yep, that better just stay on.
Check
like,
that box.
just check that box and make it like the permanent. Is that not just like a default setting?
Yeah,
like not for children.
Every episode.
Every episode is just the default setting of that. But yeah, shout out Marshall as per always. Shout out not for children. That's the best feature there is. Anyways, look, there's been a lot of shit going on in our lives across kind of the last 2 weeks since we did not feel right not seeing you on Monday. I will be honest, no homo vibes in terms of that, but like definitely
making up for it.
Yeah, we're making up for it and hopefully getting in 2 or 3 this weekend in terms of these things. But it is currently Anzac Day here. Do you guys do
I have
like
no idea what that is. I've never heard
like
of
a
that.
lest we forget? Like have you ever seen it, like the red poppy? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
Okay, so like Anzac Day is it's the National Day of Remembrance in Australia and New Zealand. Of the Gallopian landing, right? I think it would be like your Remembrance Day. No,
yeah, the Memorial Day. Yep.
Oh yeah, maybe we're fucking that up. Anyways, look, we're not going to go into that. But anyways, it's Anzac Day here, so it's public holiday, and everything's fucking closed, which is fine. Good. I appreciate everyone celebrating and supporting it. Dude, I don't have my milk for my coffee. Like I looked at I got my milk out this morning to make my like pre-training carbs, my little breakfast. Like did that, and like saw the little bit of milk, and I was like, oh, I was like, I fucked up. I'm not gonna be able to have my like standard breakfast. So those who have ever thought about Wheat Bix with water, yo, not it.
No,
not fucking it. But how weird is that though? Because like oats and water, fine. Wheat Bix and water, hard no.
See, oats and water is fine, but it's definitely better with milk.
Oh, well, what do you mean? Hold on. Let's just discuss this.
As far as flavor, as far as...
So how do you make your oats? Hold on. Fuck. This is going to be an interesting... How do you cook up oats in the morning? Or like when you make oats?
I mean, it depends what's available, but I might cook it with milk. I might cook it with water. But I would definitely say that
Hold
there's
on.
more. What?
How
What's
do you
happening? What?
hold on? What the fuck is happening here? Hold on. How do you cook your oats with milk?
You can heat milk up.
But hold on. No, so what do you do? Do you heat your milk up and then put your oats into it and then stir your oats while like I'm fucking lost.
Yeah,
Hold on. Go
just
through the process in your brain.
the same process is with water, but with milk.
What? No, okay, but so you boil your milk then? Like you basically take your milk past boiling temperature.
I wouldn't take it. It's more. It takes a little bit longer because I don't quick heat boil like I would water for quicker oats. Like if I'm using milk, it's more so getting it to a warm temperature where the oats are going to go in, they're going to soak, they're going to cook in it, going to be a little bit more absorbent. And I'm not really looking for speed if I'm doing it with milk.
Yo, I am lost at this. Hold on, but if it's not gonna like, it's not gonna be warm enough to cook the oats.
I mean, how
I'm
much do you need
so
your oats
confused.
cooked?
Yo, dude, I want my oats cooked. Like it's gonna be in fucking boiling water. Like I put boiling water into it to make sure. Like you boil the pot water, then you put your oats in as well. If you do it on a pot,
Yeah,
isn't that what you do?
you can just slow cook it. Just takes a little bit
S-
longer.
Oh no! See, if convenience and efficiency, like I'll say this: I've had oats at like a buffet and shit like that, where it's made with milk, and it's like fine. I don't have that type of time and patience in my life.
That's
I don't think you
fair.
have that amount of time and patience in
I'm
your
not
life.
cooking oats very often anymore. But in the times that I have cooked oats with milk, I would prefer the milk option. Maybe that aligns with things going a little bit slower and easier on those days. But I
No,
still stand by the fact that oats cooked in milk have more flavor.
yeah, they're creamier. Fair, I'll
Yeah.
give you that. I'll give you that. But this is like so. This is Jesus. So I mean, you could do oats and you just put like a bit of butter in it. That also works well. You do oats with water and then you just put the butter in there. Fucking efficiency, and you get the creaminess. I mean, cholesterol's fucked, but like at this point
I
in time, it
mean,
doesn't really matter.
yeah, use the butter. I still will do milk and add butter to it because butter adds to
Yo,
the flavor.
big spender. Yo, that fat budget and those
In
arteries
this,
are going. Yo,
in this economy,
yeah, in this economy, dude, I don't have enough money to pay for milk and butter. Are you fucking kidding me? Jeez. All right, you really are splashing out on a slow day if that's what's happening. Fuck me. Oh, no, you feel really, really good about yourself. You get like the grass fed, salted butter, pasteurized butter,
the
or something.
Irish butter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, now we're talking. No, that's one of those when you've really made it big. Jesus. Oh, actually, hold on. Have you ever seen one of these things before? One of my ex clients back in South Africa, I went and saw Philippa. Shout out Philippa. Um, she'll she'll never listen to this ever in her entire life. One, she's too busy, and two, I don't even think she knows this exists. I saw her when I went back to SA at the end of last year, and there was this like she she had a security camera system, and like everything was on the wall, and like underneath it, like looked like a kind of looked like a not like a DV box. That sounds terrible, but kind of looked like this like weird box. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I'm pretty good with security systems for whatever context that's required. And like I looked at it and I was like, I've never seen one of those before. Like this is interesting. Not quite sure. Turned out it was a butter heater. You ever heard of one of these fuckers? So basically, you put your butter in it, and it keeps your butter there, but it also keeps it like at the perfect. So it keeps it cool enough that it doesn't go off, but the perfect temperature that it doesn't harden. So you can just walk there and just pick up the perfect spread of butter. And I looked at her and I was like, Philippa, what the fuck are you doing? Because like she's the busiest human in the world, right? And I mean this in the like busiest, scattered, in the perfect combination of just like hustling all over, and looks after 2 kids at the same time, and a fucking household and staff and all this. And I was like, where do you have the time to even put butter on your fucking bread? And she's like, yeah, my son likes it, Carlson, like he likes it. And I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, yeah, I just don't have time to like, put the pieces of butter around the toast. So I found this butter thing and it works. And I was like, well, you're insane. But yeah, dude, they make it's like a butter softener or butter heater or whatever the fuck it was called. Butter. Hold on. We go on the internet.
Shouldn't be surprised by this, but I am. I mean, coming from how like we never had this growing up, but people just have like the butter cover or butter dish that they'll set out to keep it at room temperature. One, this just tells me like this is a prime example of somebody going on either like an as seen on TV thing where it was like, oh, I need 100%. That, or an Amazon just like perusing through their recommended list, and it was like, you seem like somebody that would like some good room temperature butter.
Yeah, it's called the one, and this is actually I just found the one exactly that I saw. It's called Perfect Butter, stainless steel lid, black base, whatever it is. That's it. That's what it's called. Perfect Butter. They make it in Australia and New Zealand. Of course they do. Fucking
the thing that I think so funny.
Electric. It's called an electric butter dish.
Oh. Whenever room temperature
Hilarious.
is just...
Hold on, wait. I got to read the description to you because this is fucking... Starts off, so it's product description. Premium performance, sophisticated design.
Let's go.
Introducing the perfect butter... Yo, I can't pronounce that word. L-file? What the fuck is that? And my language, terrible. In stainless steel and black, the world's first temperature-controlled butter conditioner, now in our most striking colorway. The smart kitchen appliance eliminates the frustration of rock hard butter, but maintaining a consistent spreadable texture 24/7. Whether it's a frost covered Christchurch morning or a humid Queensland afternoon, your butter remains the perfect consistency for the perfect spread. They've made it perfect from an advertising standpoint for both Australia and New Zealand. Hilarious. The butter spreader, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen.
In case you're looking, in case you're a person that doesn't have time to let your butter soften and you've put it in the microwave too many times and it's melted, this is for you.
You know what I like? This is... The only time I then used butter, what I've always done is I've made sure that I've timed the toast coming out of the toaster or the bread coming out of the toaster, so it's still warm. And you put the butter on, and you let the warmth from the toast. Surely that's the better way to do this. Or you ever used to get the little like the little butter dish things, the containers? You know what I'm talking about? Like you would go to a restaurant or something, or like a buffet, and they would give you the
like the little individual
one serves
slices,
and then all you do is you just sit on it. Like you put it in your pocket for like 2 minutes and it just like starts melting. It's like, there we go. That's it. Teach the kids the real stuff, not the fucking butter dish spreader stainless steel 3000 that needs to be on the kitchen counter. Dude, that thing's actually... Hold on, how much is it as well? Yo, it's 150 Australian dollars. So it's about $100. That's fucking expensive.
Yeah, luxury and convenience. My favorite thing about this store is that it's in front of the security cameras.
Yeah.
So look, just starting my day, buttering the toast for the kids, just checking all the cameras, making sure everything's okay.
Yo, welcome to South Africa. That's literally it. It's like you make your toast or make your bovril on toast and watch if your house is getting broken into. Yeah. Welcome to the discrepancies. Look, no fucking idea where we got there and how we're at. That's probably the most useless story of all time that I've taken us on in the beginning of a podcast. And I've said some fucking shit on this podcast.
But if you're listening to this and you end up purchasing that, please let us
send
know.
Me a photo. Not even let me know. Just send me a photo of that
and
like
know
the perfect
how it's
spread
improved
butter.
Your life.
I do need to know. Have I ever told you of like? Do you know how many times my dad has phoned me after like I don't know if he listens to the podcast anymore. I'll be honest. I actually don't think he does because he used to phone me once a week and be like, "You talk a fuckload of shit." Like that would be like the statement that comes out of his mouth. And when he says it, I immediately know he's listened to a podcast episode. He's like, "You can talk a load of shit." I was like, "Yep, welcome. Like I am your loins. Like that's it. That's it. Welcomes. This is just how this works." Oh man, fuck. It's been a week. All right. So we actually got some really good feedback on the gymnastics episode. Did you get? I got feedback. I don't know if it was maybe just because I was really stupid and asked some really stupid questions.
Yeah,
Or
I
some
got
good
some
questions.
good feedback,
Pretty,
good conversations from it.
pretty decent from that standpoint. I think. Look, we touched on it in there, and it's a constant trend and constant discussion within programming, and not just like sports specific in terms of this, and specific in terms of gymnastics in there, but it's the common thing that I'm always going to push back against with like even coaches that I coach or jump on console or mentoring calls with them. There always is this like um, thought to do more of the position they require, or thought to do more of the exercise that they require for the specific sport they're doing, right? And essentially, in layman's terms, what I'm saying there is like sport specific work. So, like in these cases, not necessarily just like athlete based, but it would be powerlifters. Like they would squat, bench, deadlift, and then they would do like a squat, bench, deadlift variation, for example. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a time and a place. But the variation is, I was having a conversation with this one guy, and he was asking me about it. And one of his clients had a previous pec tear and was starting to see some pain or discomfort occur when he was benching. Right, so we went through kind of like the analysis of looking at what was happening in his bench, and there was a lot of, as we would kind of press off the chest or as we would kind of initiate movement, there was that flaring of that elbow. I was like, okay, cool. So we're putting ourselves in a more exposed position by doing it. We're trying to find more internal rotation, and we're to do the things that we need to do. And as a consequence, we're seeing this flaring. And as a flare, we have a bit of a tip of the scapula or an eye of that scap, and we would then see this pain occur. Right, and like we went through this conversation and we kind of like identified this and we went through it, and I was like, all right, so what's the game plan? Like, what are we going to do in terms of obviously bringing up the exposure to the correct position, find the internal rotation, be able to actually express the force that we need in this, and looking at the program again, nothing wrong necessarily in any shape or form. I just think thinking in a slightly different manner in this could be important. So, in the program we had bench press, we had bench press, flat dumbbell press, and bench press, machine shoulder press, and machine chest press. And so I looked at that and I was like, it's like nothing wrong, as I said. However, right, very much like a linear exposure approach. And I was like, all right, what's the one thing that we're doing that from a positional standpoint that we are spending a lot of time in here? And then we kind of were going back and forth in terms of this, and there was some discussion of like the interventions in the very beginning of, okay, we're seeing a deficiency of internal rotation or a deficiency of relative internal rotation to be able to press off the bottom there. What are we doing from a corrective exercise, rehabilitation, pre-activation work? Because we do know that this is someone who obviously has a pec tear or injury that has occurred. And when we went through it, a lot of the interventions at play were very much kind of like glenoid, were more scapular to rib cage interventions, which in powerlifting, moving the scapula around that rib cage can be important. However, there's also a difference in terms of moving that scap, not necessarily in the way of rib cage to scapula or scapula to rib cage. So just kind of in this one linear approach, we have to also think about, creating a little bit of opposite exposure to what we generally see within powerlifting, what do we generally see? We see scaps back and down in everything that we kind of do. And like, not going to debate the whole, like, if your scaps move, blah, blah, blah. There's and fair amount, a small amount, fine. But primarily the exposure to that pattern is going to be scaps back and down. We kind of know this is where this is. Right. And I went through that pressing scenario with him. I was like, cool. So we got bench press and we got overhead press on a machine, and then we got chest press on a machine. It's like, at what time period are we going to do the opposite of the position that we are stuck in? Like, give ourselves some form of exposure, because even in the rehab or corrective based work, like, we did nothing that was glenohumeral joint to scapula, right? Which would be quite important if we're looking at finding external rotation to give us access to internal rotation. If we're, resisting that force on the way down, right? Finding shoulder extension, then actually being able to press out of it, there's going to be a degree of ER there. So it's this concept of, how do I, or what can I do from a corrective exercise or exercise to improve my ability to get into external rotation, to then be able to produce force in internal rotation, right? And not have the scap tip, not have these kind of things go on. And that's kind of, we led down the route of what interventions we're doing. We noticed that everything was kind of, I want to say, like, horizontal scapula to ribcage. Would that be a fair comment? Kind of like more like this, instead of scap moving around ribcage, like protraction, getting serratus involved, etc. Like, I kind of want to use the language of horizontal. Would that be fair? Kind of.
Yeah, I
Kind of.
mean, I think how you're describing it, it would make sense. I think a lot of people relate like a horizontal press and a vertical press, and
Okay.
so getting some
Yeah.
overlap in that language. But I understand
Language.
where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more like, it's more direct scapula to ribcage, not scapula moving in a protracted manner of ribcage. Maybe that's the more efficient language in that. Would you add? No? Yes? Fine?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to add to it, so not
It's
as
a hard,
much.
it's a
Yeah,
hard one to
not
think
so
about,
much
actually.
the scapula having to move around the rib cage, but more so it being able to hold position so
And the
the
ribcage to the
humerus can.
scap.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
pressings occurring in a more scapular stable environment, maybe.
Yeah. Right. So, happy in terms of, so we kind of went through a few things of like, hey, like, let's maybe focus on, keeping that scap, doing some rear delt work, getting some ER, getting into these positions. Thoracic rotation important, which he had there, and especially from powerlifters, very, very important. Not being able to kind of go through anything that's not flexion extension, super important. But then we went to kind of the exercises, and I was like, all right, like, we're struggling to maintain this position. Like, as we get into our what did we see the other day? We actually fucking spoke about this. Funny enough, this is actually coming together. Where we saw kind of that discussion of like, you're going too deep, right? And that's why you're not getting the shoulder extension. You're not getting, what was the words, the language? Not to shit on the guy in any shape or form. I can't even remember who it was, but anyways, there was the discussion around like the depth of which kind of bringing the barbell into, and unfortunately, what we started seeing is, as we got kind of lower, all this inability to get into true shoulder extension or a degree of hyperextension with the correct arm path, and keeping those scaps in where we require to hit our range and then produce that IR as we come up. The discussion was like, well, what exercises could we bring into the mix here to produce variability? Variability being one, and off the back end of that, also some form of load management, because like, the dude was strong, right? He was, I think it was like 140 kilos for sets of like 5 or 6, like just and like a younger kid in terms of this, like, had this pec tear. So there was some form of like, how can we load management at the same time? And the exercise that was put to me was like single arm dumbbell press, and I was like, let's discuss it. I was like, where's the thought? What's that? Okay, well, load management. And I was like, this is the problem, right? And this is like in and I know you share the same thought, but I'd love to let you talk and not me talk for fucking 30 minutes here. The conversation around load management, when everything is in the same language of progressive overload, falls into the, how do I make this How do I use less load in this position? A lot of times, as we said, someone going from bilateral will go to a unilateral and they'll use less load because we're unilateral in some extent. And that in the heads or in the minds of a lot of people is like, yep, that's load management. And like, not wrong necessarily, but I would argue against it in a few other ways, because it's not just about the load management. It should be about the position exposure. And in my opinion, when we look at this, the introduction to positions that we are not spending time in, right? And by not spending time in that position, when we do spend time there, we are inherently going to be using less load. Right? That's kind of like where I'm thinking about going with this, or my discussions around that. Now, that could be for example, bench press flat, bench press barbell, and then you could go into like a shoulder overhead press with like a 45-degree bench, right? So like really trying to get overhead. For me, I'm not going to go unilateral as my load management. Immediately of going into this overhead plane is going to load manage us, why we're more unstable in that position. We require a lot more in terms of a deviation of center of mass, and like the basis support, we're getting further away from it. It's going to inherently be less strong. However, what I like about that is what we require more internal rotation in that position to kind of get there. It's like, so for me, I could use that as the answer. The question that I'm going is like, what do I need to create exposure to be able to then use that to carry over to the lift that I'm trying to do in the sports specific realm? Now, that's an example that I would use for someone who can get overhead effectively, who can, and possibly in other programming, have a scap that moves around the ribcage. That is a more direct load management constraint, in my opinion. However, in this case, and where we're really trying to double down on that, is you still, when you go overhead, going to have a degree of keeping your scaps down. But if you're doing it properly, your scaps have to move, because we're in and past kind of this 90-degree of flexion. Hopefully, fuck, I really hope so, because otherwise you're just pressing to the top of your head, right? And by a consequence of that, the scapula has to move, or has to facilitate the movement of the glenohumeral joint to be able to get into this position, right? And the problem is, again, how many times have you seen people cue like scaps backing down when we're pressing overhead? It's like, yo, the scap needs to fucking move. Otherwise, you are going to get that shoulder pain that you always get in the front of your delt. It's like, you're doing this to yourself, right? But I think it kind of maybe that becomes the progression model off the back end of this is I look at this and go, well, I'm not going to go single arm dumbbell press. I'm going to go landmine press. I'm going to landmine press because it is load management in the load 100%. No one's going to press like a true landmine press correctly anywhere near what their load ability would be on like a barbell bench press, or even a flat dumbbell, or even an overhead dumbbell. Like, but more importantly, I'm getting upward rotation, protraction, and movement of the scapula in that vertical oblique kind of to carry on part of the language that I don't really like that I was kind of coming up with, but let's go with it. Like, that to me is going to be a much better exposure, much better load managed, much better, and I really don't like that I keep saying much better, but in the long run, we're essentially creating a variability of exposure to ranges that is going to be more beneficial than doubling down on a range that we're finding an issue in. Discuss thoughts.
Yes.
Fuck, I
So
said a lot there.
yes, you did. And I'm going to try to hit all the points to the best of my memory, because you covered a lot of great points. And to start with, where I think I want to start is load management should come by way of positional selection through the
Yes.
exercise that we select, not inherently just based on the loadability of an exercise. And I'll echo some of the things you said. I'll dig a little bit deeper into it. It's a different thought process in the approach of, am I choosing something just because they can't lift the same load? Or am I choosing something that offers a variation to the way we lift currently in the program to create capacity, time, and exposure in a position that is going to allow us to better navigate, potentially create greater ability to work in and out of a position. And through that, it creates a limitation in the load. These are two different ways, and I like that you brought about the single arm dumbbell press and the landmine, because I think those, if broken down and understood, um, it'll reflect this very well. So somebody that's strong in, still in a similar plane of motion that they're pressing, that is going to kind of replicate or repeat the position, the pattern that we're trying to solve for. So a couple things with that. One, it's it's managing the load in a way of reduction to the dumbbell because it's not bilaterally loaded. That doesn't mean that inherently there's not a matching profile of load, especially for somebody strong and that can, within reason, maintain a position. Somebody that's in powerlifting, they're typically fairly good at a dumbbell press, so they
Yeah.
have some transferability in that skill set to be able to move. Yes, there is more instability inherently built into the single arm dumbbell press, but again, it's a lot closer to the sport specific thing than what we would necessarily want to get. Another aspect of this, it's not creating a constraint in the way that we're discussing that should be the determining factor for load management. Because think about that dumbbell press in comparison of the landmine. And it's great that we have this visual now because I can use my hands
Yeah.
while talking.
Yay.
But in that dumbbell press, we still have access to the position that is creating irritation. And so, in that, if we're going through the unilateral press, but still falling into that same winging elbow position, that elevated rolling forward shoulder position, we're just creating or setting an environment for that irritation to continue. So, if our solution allows us to access the position that creates irritation, that in itself is not restricting or constraining, but instead we're hoping to find our way to kind of navigate this through more of a unstable environment and hopefully using that awareness or proprioception. For some it might work, but it's not going, it takes a very thoughtful athlete, a very thoughtful person to try to recognize that position, or a lot of diligence through the coach. Whereas where we look to the landmine press, think about trying to replicate that same position in the landmine press, whether you're standing or whether you're half kneeling. Think about trying to dump in how far you have to let that landmine come in to get anywhere close to replicating that position. If somehow you're falling into this position on
You're
landmine
in a
press,
dip.
yeah, if you land into that dip position, one, props to you for still being able to hold on to the
Hold it.
barbell, but that's a true constraint, and through that constraint, that's what creates the load management, is because we're trying to avoid or trying to limit the irritation of pain at the shoulder. We're trying to be mindful about when we go into the position, especially if we're building in season, if we're close to meet and we're trying to use this to offset that pressure, that stretch or stress on the shoulder. We don't want to get close to that until we have to. Like minimum effective dose, what's the least amount of bench pressing that we can do at this time while we're managing the pain and the irritation, that we have to get close to that position. And the rest of the time, let's not touch it. Let's find different ways that we can allow for exposure without the demand of forced production through that same pattern and positioning that has shown irritation, pain as a result. So, one, landmine is great in that it's allowing for that constraint, a true constraint in load management. Two, as you were saying, which these will couple very, very nice, thinking about the landmine press. One, we have a lot of progressibility in how we want to utilize that tool. Do we want a lower degree of flexion that we're bringing into it? Do we want a half kneeling, a standing model without touching load? There is still loadability that we can run on this, but through that exposure of position, we have a lot of opportunities how we can allow for variability in that press, still going down the rabbit hole of unilateral. So that thought process that they were trying to tap into with a unilateral position to try to address an asymmetry from one side to the other, yes, we can tap into that a little bit. We're still using the bench press as our tester to see, hey, is this getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same? Is it manageable at a competitive load? We have all that because we're not doubling down on the pressing in the same position. Now we're looking to incorporate that rib cage position. We're offering a different thoracic position too than what we might be using if we're incorporating
Benching and
that
getting
arch. That's
extension.
also
Didn't
going
even
to
think about that.
change the dynamic of how that scap has to navigate. But the great thing that you mentioned that pairs and transfers really, really well, you talked about a rear delt fly. So think about that, that it's not this down and back on either of those. Oftentimes what we're trying to find, it's not an elevated position, but it is a scap up position that's trying to stabilize, not just pin the fuck down with pressure from the pad against it. So now we're finding multiple iterations where the scap is being challenged to stabilize. We have the muscularity around that shoulder girdle that is being challenged to work through a position and alleviate the tension of just falling into a range of motion that we're limited by or we're just getting put into. And again, with that, we can still pair that with the bench press. We can find the minimum effective dose while incorporating this exposure, building capacity, and through that capacity, offsetting stress. So whenever we do have to run stress, tension through that area, it's more direct and purposeful and intentional to the actual meet or performance that we're going to. And then by looking or by utilizing those other positions, we're getting the benefit, but also in that load management, fatigue management, that's what we're looking at is we're picking these positions not just because it's less loadable, but it's from a neurological capacity, it's going to down regulate our ability to load it as we learn, as we diversify, as we transfer stress to different areas and get more coordination through muscle groups, through our joint positioning to try to be more effective. The other thing with both of those that I think about oftentimes is with the bench press. Again, you mentioned like the down and back for the bench press. If we get into the single rep, it's going to be a little bit more accurate in trying to hold a position for one rep, the best that we can. Ultimately, still going to have a little bit of movement, a little bit of change. But the thing that people don't think about is the handoff aspect of it. We're always going from a flexed position to have to go here. And so if you're never training that, if you're only using that more horizontal press of the bench, of the machine, of dumbbells, whatever it is, we're never actually training that starting that initiating position. To me, that's like thinking about the squat and I mean monolift. Yes, we found a solution in certain competitions for this, but if you're not in a powerlifting meet that use a monolift, a squat, you have to walk it out. If you only ever train on a monolift and then you do a powerlifting meet where you actually have to walk that out and move to one foot to the other to try to find position, the timing, the coordination of it, it's very similar in my mind to that of we're training a position that we're going to get exposure to. Yes, we should not spend a lot of time in it, and that's not the goal, is to get better at just trying to pull this off. But there is a reality where our arm has to go in flexion, our scap has to move, and we're going to set it so that pinned down hold, it's limited already off the get-go because the initiation of the movement demands something different. And so by thinking about that, by incorporating this variability that you talked about, by thinking about positions in a way, again, how they manage load and fatigue by that exposure and building capacity in it, rather than this is just less weight, it can really open up and put more of a global perspective of how we program and start seeing this transferability of what we're trying to do through multiple times. People get the best results by more practice, more exposure. And so instead of a lot more pressing that we need to incorporate into our program, to this, it's looking at where that variability of our scapula can be and has the ability to stabilize in those dynamic positions. It's the ability to get our shoulder in more overhead positions than just always relying on that horizontal pressing that, yes, does become very sport specific, but how that allows more of a broader perspective, but also long term, more uh, a more long term approach to how we're going to program and how we're going to try to keep athletes healthy by mitigating risks, by being mindful of the stress in the positions that we're creating redundancy in our program.
Yeah, it's funny the handoff, or even kind of the self unrack, has always been one that I've always found super interesting in watching people try and attempt. It's like you're doing a protraction. Like no one can keep here, and like you literally have to be strong in the position or the ability to protract and then set yourself back down into that position. It's like, why are we not thinking not just in an exposure standpoint that's just from bench pressing of like, hey, it would probably be really good if I knew how to like move my arm into the full protracted position, whether that's and vitally important, as you mentioned, with a degree of flexion involved, which I think would be quite appropriate, right? Or at least training the exposure to getting full protraction. I immediately think something along the lines of training the pec in its most shortened position. Because for us to get the pec in its most shortened position, we have to have a degree of protraction that occurs to facilitate that scapula moving to actually get to the short position. So it's like, it would probably be a really good idea for us to have exercises within the program that allow for exposure and touching on these positions we get into. It's like a cable chest press for me becomes more sport specific than a dumbbell bench press would be necessarily to a bench press in the bench scenario, because it's going to be that literally that exposure to this. What happens when we dumbbell press? Everyone just kicks up and they're immediately in this position. It's like you haven't had any protraction there. You've had no shortening that happens. You've immediately gone into the position that you're going to be strong in, but in less load because it's a dumbbell versus the barbell. It's like, well, find ways to expose said press position or said start position in ways that are true load management, but are actually going to improve shoulder function. Yeah, you'll get some cool, like a small amount of hypertrophy from it, short range, not really, but like, hey, you're going to get better shoulder exposure, shoulder function, shoulder functioning better for overall load pressing. Probably a fucking good idea.
Well,
It's there.
yeah, and in the example that you used of the like cable press versus the dumbbell press with the protraction on, even thinking about not that we're looking to fail, but the possibility of failure. Like, do I want to dumbbell bench press here and fail? No, because things are going to go right, and I need to be mindful of where the gravitational pull is. In that horizontal single arm cable, yeah, it's much easier to go through that protracted position if we need to train that, if we need to develop that exposure. And if we have to let go, it goes behind us. It doesn't fall on us. It doesn't crush us. It doesn't pull us out of position. The other thing with this is, again, any power lifter that is listening to this, please do not go and start implementing this. Talk to your coach or just food for thought. But there should not be these huge deficits. Yes, there should be a deficit, especially in powerlifting, whenever we're trying to move the most amount of weight, the shortest distance for that sport. But outside of competition, there shouldn't be these huge deficits in our ability to get into a position and then be able to execute from that. So, I think to my own bench, there's a certain number on the bench where I don't feel comfortable unracking myself, which is fine. I'm not trying to unrack and do my max because either I'm going to have less of a max or we're just,
It's gonna be a real bad
yep,
day.
we're just seeing what's going to happen. But to that, there's not hundreds of pounds difference in my ability to unrack. I'm completely comfortable and confident in my ability to unrack 315, 325, 335 on my own if I have to. I'm not going for reps on that because that'd be dumb.
No,
But
no.
but there's an increase in 20, 30, 40 pounds with somebody unracking for me that I can touch and I can start working through. But I don't want there to be this huge gap of me lifting in the mid threes on a bench press and then I can't unrack 265 on my own.
Yeah,
I need to recognize that, hey, this is an inherent weakness and it's a position that I need to initiate the movement. So that's an aspect of how I look at training. And again, this is somebody that doesn't have pec tears, somebody that doesn't have shoulder issues. So be
stop.
mindful of who you're hearing this from. And if you choose to do this, how you incorporate it into your own program. If you're preparing for a powerlifting meet, don't do this. If you have a coach, talk to your coach. If you're doing this on your own, be mindful that it's not meant to be anywhere close to your max, but I'll take those loads and I'll know what I can safely unrack, set in position, and be able to do singles. Whenever I'm doing that, I'll adjust my training. So if I have somebody that can hand off for me or not, there might be a difference in 10 to 30 pounds of what I might run that day on my comfortability. If I don't have somebody to hand off, I'm staying with what I know I can safely execute on. Whereas if I have somebody to hand off, hey, we can go a little bit heavier because I don't have to initiate, I don't have to constrain, I don't have to find a lesser degree of position that I'm trying to hold and manage. Also, there's going to be a much longer time period in that transitional phase of me holding my breath to be able to use that if I'm pulling it, if I'm unrocking myself and somebody's helping me with it. And you need to be mindful of that. Don't fucking run out of breath whenever the bar is over your body. I feel like now I'm just worked up that maybe I've seen too many videos of people just letting it go on their throats
Right.
at like 24-hour gyms and
Yep.
almost dying. But all these things, again, just considerations into these minor details, but how they can really tell a larger story and how they can create some understanding and exposure of what might be a limitation that we're ignoring and where there are potential opportunities where we can address something if we truly understand, again, load management and fatigue management, how those are different, but also in particular about load management should be based on exercise selection, creating a constraint in our ability to load because there's greater emphasis, there's greater demands, there's greater capacities that we're trying to work in positions, not just the fact alone of I can't lift as heavy with one hand as two hands.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complex than like that. Well, it should be, but the problem is, like we said, like there's many times that we see this of, you know, bilateral to unilateral is the answer in my load management strategy. It's like if that's your answer, if that's your go-to, I applaud. I encourage. I dramatically encourage you to think a little bit further than load specific because it is a
glass ceiling in terms of runway in both progression and regression models. And it's something for you to be very, very mindful of how you are going to very quickly run into issues that are likely going to be structural issues with your client with regards to either injuries or limitations or dysfunctions that start to kind of come up. So a very, very useful tool of thought to kind of come in from a podcast on butter to moving like butter. There it is, full circle, right? Being able to move like throw out the butter warmer and actually just learn how to regress and progress more effectively, and you can press like butter. On that note, guys, we appreciate you listening to the shit that comes out of our mouths always, but hope you took something important from this.